Hey Leety, I finally got some commentary material for you.
You do realize that I don't make commentaries anymore. It's been what, a year since I made my last commentary? Yet people still assume, despite me moving on to bigger projects, that I'm still a commentator. You know what? I'm going to look at this just to tell you I won't do a commentary on it. Okay, you win.
And that's another point for me.
So the reality of why I'm actually here is that Master TP10 linked me this video, and my reaction wasn't exactly the most pleased. Over the years of editing videos, brainstorming ideas, and also taking classes regarding the communication field, I've been trying to analyze videos as a form of experience and discussion. For those reasons, I'm not in any way going to try to trash or scald the user or anyone that might share a similar viewpoint, but conduct an analysis that will share my current viewpoint on the subject.
When the hell did you turn to Gwis?
Now? So the main reason we're doing this commentary is because we feel this viewer has a misguided view on the term overrated. Now, as most of my viewers know, I have delved into this subject on multiple occasions, one which I am still fairly proud of, though I do regret a number of my decisions. However, I do have a clearer understanding of the term, as well as how to make sophisticated arguments, which I would like to share during this commentary.
Which leads us to our first real issue with the video.
And you have to admit, there are a few whose popularity just doesn't add up compared to what they're actually capable of in game, or just compared to other Pokemon. So today we'll be counting down the top 10 most overrated Pokemon in history. Before we begin though, what qualifies as overrated? Well, in this case, it's just Pokemon undeserving of their popular or even wildly unpopular status given the reasons people like or dislike them. For example, a Pokemon that's perceived to be strong based on how it looks, and people like it for that reason, but in reality it underperforms in battle.
You see, whenever you're trying to form any sort of argument, whether it be for teaching, discussion, or even debate, it is vital to define a term and tell what type of definition it is. There are about 10 ways to define a term, such as definition by experience, history, authority, or one of the most common, by textbook. Overrate. To rate or appraise too highly. Now, this is not to be confused with popularity, which quickly leads to another problem within this video.
Or in the case of number 10, a Pokemon that is vilified for a particular reason, when there are plenty of other Pokemon more deserving of this criticism. You probably guessed it based on that description. Kicking off the list at number 10 is the most hated Pokemon in recent history, Trubbish. Why people dislike Trubbish is on the surface very easy to understand.
And this is the reason why defining the term properly first is so important, because we can easily bring up a counterclaim to this statement since we have another term, overhate, to hate too much. Because of this, I can easily make the argument that this particular entry should not belong on the list.
Trubbish is far from the least human looking or even grossest Pokemon design there is though. The Generation 1 Pokemon, Grimer and Muk, are literally based off of sludge, or decomposing feces, which is absolutely the grossest possible concept for a Pokemon to ever exist.
If the purpose of putting Trubbish on the list was to tell us that Pokemon like Muk should be criticized for the same shit that Trubbish is called on, then why not just put Pokemon like Muk on the list in the first place? You'd still be able to get your point across, and you wouldn't have to deal with people calling you out for putting such a generally disliked Pokemon on your list of overliked Pokemon. So, number 9?
No, 13. Of course number 9.
Number 9, Gardevoir. Gardevoir has been a popular Pokemon for many reasons, but somehow it ended up as the postermon for the Pokephilia community. For the uninitiated, there exists a small subgroup of Pokemon fans who don't just want to train and battle Pokemon, they want to date them too. Say what you want about these people, but it won't change the fact that they're out there. While most any humanoid or even non-humanoid Pokemon can qualify as what they call a waifu, none seems more popular than the Generation 3 Pokemon Gardevoir. Mostly, depictions of Gardevoir in this community tend to portray it as a very feminine Pokemon, giving it breasts and feminine facial features. However, let's take a look at Gardevoir as an actual Pokemon, shall we? Not only can Gardevoir be either male or female, but in Japanese its name is the decidedly masculine Sir Knight. Its design isn't meant to resemble a feminine form wearing a dress, but instead a masculine magical knight. Its chest is completely flat, with no protrusions other than the red triangle that pierces its body. So sorry Gardevoir lovers everywhere, but your waifu is kind of a dude.
While you see Gardevoir as a more masculine Pokemon based on its concept, others see it as a more feminine Pokemon based on its design. It also doesn't help your argument when the Worlds line has a male-only evolution in Gallade, whereas Gardevoir has just as much of a chance of being either gender. Also, its name could very well be a reference to how Gardevoir will actually risk its own life to save its trainer's life. In fact, if you were to look up its Japanese name even further, it translates to "Come, my knight," reflecting what I just said.
Also, despite everything Master TP10 said, this is another entry I don't feel belongs on this list. What does porn have to do with actual praise? Practically nothing except giving people more fapping material. I also have to say something. Online Roll 34, if you can think about it, there's most likely porn for it. But when it comes to certain communities, it seems like an allergic reaction. Look, you have every right to dislike it. However, I do find it more annoying that porn is the focal point, making such statements more annoying than the porn itself. There are far things worse than such imagery that might even be considered illegal, but generally, they get a free pass and never talked about negatively, but treat bedroom activities, which is none of your business by the way, as if it's a crime. Now, excuse me while I go back to Mindshao. Oh, Mindshao, oh, you're so sexy, but why do you have to be so overrated?
Okay, then can we move on?
Number 8. Whitney's Miltank. There were always some gym leaders that we had trouble with as kids.
For the most part, another video on Whitney's Miltank from someone by the username of KB Madhouse came up recently, where he brings up both actual strategies to use against her Miltank, but also other Pokemon in the games that can be just as difficult, if not more, than Miltank, yet are overshadowed by it. Honestly, it explains the anti-trend of Miltank being tough far better than either she or us really could.
For a Machop and Goldenrod department store, to give you a type advantage.
Hold up, I see a problem here. You're mentioning that Miltank isn't that tough with Machop, yet you showed evidence that worked against it. Look, if you're finding contradiction while searching for evidence, don't be afraid to change your claims. This is something that early debaters need to learn and understand that your first assumptions, most of the time, are going to be incorrect. If that's the case, feel free to seek out more evidence to back up your claim.
Additionally, Totodile learns Rage very early on in the game, which can be an effective way to take out Miltank if you let it build its Rage first while battling her Clefairy. Actually, her Clefairy was much more of a threat. With Metronome in its arsenal, it could end up using Spore, Confuse Ray, Thunder Wave, Swords Dance, Double Team, Leech Seed, Sacred Fire, or even Self-Destruct and Explosion. Now that is a pink Pokemon you don't want to mess with.
You're right. Via Metronome, it can learn Sacred Fire and Explosion. You know what else it can learn through Metronome? Splash.
And just to add to Master TP10's point, if you're claiming Croconaw can build up Rage from Clefairy which uses Metronome, that's all luck instead of actual strategy. You have more of a chance as Smokescreen to dodge rollouts than that method. Once again, even if it's not intended, it feels like you're only giving an example out of one instance, which while making a case off of examples, you can't do that or the argument appears weak.
We're skipping number 7 because her segment on Magikarp literally talks about the very thing Magikarp exists for. For someone who tried to bring up Gardevoir's concept to defend its placement on the list, your lack of bringing up anything but Magikarp's concept really hurts your point.
We're also skipping number 6 because Missing Number doesn't even qualify as a Pokemon, and therefore also doesn't belong on the list.
Number 5. Mew. Mew has long had the reputation of being the rarest Pokemon in existence. It's been given the Phantom and Mirage Pokemon monikers, and it has inspired millions of rumors about how to go about obtaining this creature. It's amazing that this Pokemon was the one to jog so many kids' imaginations, and cause them to come up with so many strange theories about how to catch it, and yet it's actually the easiest to obtain Legendary in any Pokemon game, thanks to a very well-known glitch. In Red and Blue, there were not 1, not 2, but 3 trainers in Kanto that can cause Mew to appear when performing the aptly named Mew glitch. And on top of that, Pokemon duplication glitches were simple too. It was not uncommon to find kids with entire PC boxes full of Mews.
The problem I have with this is that it's not an official way to catch Mew. The point of the rumor was thinking that Game Freak has a secret way of obtaining, and this method was discovered by accident. Basically, cheating.
Not only that, but Game Freak has distributed over 20 different Mews in various countries, from 2005 to 2010, making it one of the most highly distributed legendary Pokemon ever. If you own Red, Blue, or Yellow and you've never had a Mew, odds are you're just not looking very hard for one.
But the point was that it was tough to catch, and people used to think like this. Part of developing argument is keeping up to date with your sources. If it's dated, the claim just goes invalid.
And when was Mew rare again? Oh yeah, back when Gen 2 was the most recent generation. Speaking of Gen 2, we're skimming her segment on Pichu. Why?
Because no one ever praises it.
Most evolutions. Something about Eevee and its many evolutions has made it one of the most popular Pokemon of all time.
When you think of Pokemon, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Pikachu. Types.
Exactly. The point is that Eevee is a recognizable Pokemon to even people outside the fandom. In college, I had a colleague who got out of Pokemon in the 2nd gen, who said her favorite was Eevee because she liked the idea of forms. And as far as I'm aware, that's where the acknowledgement comes from. This is known as being a market success due to various reasons which aren't unwarranted. And once again, has to do with popularity, not praise. Eevee, in short, is just a very recognizable Pokemon with a concept only it has, which allows everyone to have a favorite. Which is why the fanbase seems large, and I don't feel unjustified.
But I personally have never really understood why it continues to be so popular. Sure, it's cute, but at this point there are many cuter Pokemon
Completely
out there.
subjective.
Like Oshawott or Joltik or Victini.
Well, if you're to ask me, there's only one
aren't
Pokemon in that group
particularly
that's
exceptional
cuter.
in battle.
Victini!
Flareon, aside from its obvious weakness to the ever-present Stealth Rock, was given 130 base attack and nothing to do with it. It learns exactly 2 physical Fire-type moves, Fire Fang and Flame Charge, neither of which have high enough base power to be useful in late game or competitive. Not with other better physical fire attackers with better movesets to compete with anyway.
1. Who said it need to be used in late game to be helpful? I ran 1 through the entirety of Black 2. It was useful. 2. You're forgetting Baton Pass. In sync of the speed boost of a Flame Charge, or Curse making it a decent supporter and different from the Pokemon listed. 3. You're not highlighting its other stats, which Will-O-Wisp can accommodate for a poor defense and enough special defense to make a Pokemon a supportive, crippling side for NU teams.
And number 4, who praises Flareon because of its battling capabilities? People like Flareon because it's cute and it uses fire-type attacks, and until the end of time, at least the latter will never change.
It's also quite slow, and without the bulk to defend itself with, that lack of speed often means it won't even get a chance to attack before it gets one-hit KO.
Alright, I want you to take a close look at this. See how the HP bar didn't go down that much. Take note that the Pokemon shown is not burned and is using a physical move. You see how the evidence is contradicting what you're saying? Once again, if the evidence goes against your first accusations, then don't be afraid to change it.
Similarly, Leafeon's biggest problem is that there's just so many better grass types to choose from, both offensively and defensively. It also lacks the variety of status-afflicting moves that most grass types come equipped with, having only Grass Whistle and Toxic to choose from.
Alright, I got a lot to say here. The comparison of Sawsbuck doesn't work, since Sawsbuck is not known for taking a hit and is weak against fighting, a very common typing in metagame. Sawsbuck works a lot better as a sweeper, as Leafeon is supposed to be a kind of mix-up between both support and defensive properties, so the comparison does not work. Speaking of which, Grass-type support is not limited to powders. Leafeon has access to both Sword Dance and Baton Pass, with enough defense to make it helpful, as well as Instant Recover with Synthesis and Chlorophyll, a great combination. So basically, all these comparisons are completely irrelevant.
It's still an NU.
Shut up, it's underrated. Now get in the box.
Better than the Iron Man, I suppose. No matter, we're skipping to number 2 anyway. Don't worry, you're not missing much, it's just her missing the point of multiple evolutions.
Number 2. Most starters. At the beginning of every game, you're given a Pokemon, and that Pokemon is usually with you the longest out of any of the other Pokemon you catch for your journey. So it's only natural people get more attached to starter Pokemon than others. Unfortunately, this attachment comes with the added side effect of undeserved praise. It's not uncommon for starter Pokemon to end up being the most powerful Pokemon in most people's parties. They have a very fast experience growth rate, and as a result, end up easily overleveled when compared to most party members and enemy trainers' Pokemon. But let's be honest here, just because your Typhlosion can easily flatten Picnic or Best level 10 Hoppip, that doesn't mean it's actually a particularly strong Pokemon.
Yes, they are! Okay, they're not supposed to be Dragonite powerful, but whoever says they are? They're just supposed to be Pokemon that you get at the beginning of the game to keep momentum during the playthrough. The only ones ever praised for being more powerful than the other starters are Blaziken, Infernape, and Venusaur, mostly because of the competitive metagame, And, spoiler alert, she praises them for being more powerful than the other starters, giving even less of a reason for any of these starters here to be on this list.
On the contrary, the vast majority of all starter Pokemon out there are outclassed when it comes to battling. Much like the evolutions, the bigger problem with most of these starters in battle is just that there's always a Pokemon that can fill their role better than they can. They all tend to have mediocre stats and move pools that make it hard for them to even compete.
Let's go through these one by one, shall we?
Blastoise is a spinner, Cloyster is more of a practical sweeper. Meganium is a supporting tank-like Pokemon, while Vileplume is more of a crippling Pokemon. Sceptile is more of a sweeper, and Roserade is more of a supporter.
Feraligator's moveset is more physically based as opposed to Kabutops' support-based move pool. Typhlosion's a special sweeper, while Entei's a physical one. Oh, and by the way, Entei's a legendary, and legendaries are expected to be better than regular Pokemon. Same goes with Suicune and Empoleon, who, FYI, has a steel typing that Suicune can't beat. Gastrodon's only advantage over Swampert is Storm Drain. Give both of them the same abilities and see how Swampert would come out on top. Samurott is a standard sweeper while Slowking is a supporting tank.
Torterra is a tank that hits back, while Ferrothorn is simply a wall. Superior is a knack of all trades, while Abomasnow is basically for hail. These are completely irrelevant comparisons, and the only reason I think you're doing this is because you looked at Smogon, looked at the type, then decided that they were inferior, which I have against because having experience with Smogon, I know the basics. Tiers are only measured by usefulness and meta, nothing else. I feel Pokemon should not be compared like this unless they are very similar Pokemon you can obtain almost as easily as a starter.
And the number one most overrated Pokemon is...
Is it Emboar?
Is it unknown?
Is it Charizard?
Is it Reggie?
Charizard.
Reggie was a close
Yes,
second.
Charizard gets its own category outside the other starter Pokemon.
And I think we should stop here, because there's nothing really wrong with her Charizard segment, other than the fact that she uses anime footage for her points. It never actually brings up the anime as an argument.
The only problem I see is that she brought up an interesting point as far as the card goes. But why couldn't she do that with everything else? The fact that Meganium gets more criticism than anything else, bringing up what people already know Magikarp for, and probably the most important thing, looking up what overrated means.
Now to be fair to her, her video wasn't horrible. It's not like her points were presented in an overly pretentious fashion. It's not like she didn't do any research. It's not like she didn't try. I can safely say that I've seen, and hell, I've even commented on, worse lists about overrated Pokemon. With that said, it's all the backwards logic in this that gets to me. Whether it's trying to go against norms that really are against the point of the video, or completely agreeing with those norms. It's also safe to assume that this really could have used a little more work.
Overall, even though this video was guarded by good editing with, for the most part, appropriate visuals, I felt this was just plain rushed, jumped on too many popular viewpoints, made conclusions based off of first assumptions, and judging Pokemon by Smogon. Final thoughts, Meganium is now more overcriticized than Arceus. Speaking of Arceus, for the love of Arceus, quit kissing this woman's ass already.
So does that mean you're back into commentating?
We're done here.
I feel alone.